Two Essendon out-of-contract players have been rewarded with one-year deals. We're going to talk about that right now.
We've always had the passion and the iron will.
So two Bombers who are out of contract have been rewarded with one-year deals. The first of them is Liam McMahon. I think this is good news. I like Liam McMahon. I think he is, at the very least, a good depth player and could actually be potentially better than that. It obviously depends on a number of factors. We don't really know where he fits into the team if we are at full strength, and we don't quite know, who we're going to pick up in the draft. Are we going to pick up a tall? At this stage, it appears probably not. But who knows? We've got the 4 draft picks at the moment. Could that be more? Could it be 5? Depending on the trade period, depending on all the comings and goings and all that sort of thing. But based on what we've seen so far, he has earned that one-year contract, and I think this is a good move. Not everybody was sold on him. A lot of people, a lot of other people around the Essendon community were thinking he's kind of borderline and might not make the cut. What I like about him is that he just finds a way to kick goals. I think one of the things about him that may have been a problem in why it took him so long to make it is that he's not particularly athletic. When you look at him, he hasn't got a lot of, natural gifts that you would, that would come up in beep tests and all the sort of things when they go to the draft combines and that sort of thing. But what he just does do, he just puts the score on the board and he's very efficient. He just knows how to kick goals. He doesn't do it in a fuss. He doesn't do things spectacularly, but he just kicks accurately, he reads the ball well, and he's got good leading patterns. And I think, unlike a lot of other players who are, nominal forwards on our list, he's what you would call a natural full forward. I don't think Nate Caddy, for example, and we think Nate Caddy can be a star one day, obviously, but I don't think he's a natural full forward. He's an athletic type who we're looking at his height and his ability and putting him at full forward and, hoping that he can grow into that position and learn it. McMahon is a smart full forward. He knows how to lead. He knows how to take a good mark on the lead. He knows how to kick accurately. He just lacks that that natural athletic ability that is synonymous with so many players that make it at AFL level. But I think he's got enough football nous and football brain that he can make it at this level. And it's good to see him rewarded with a one-year contract. Where do I see him next year? Well, I've stated I actually think that he and May and Caddy all offer something a little bit different to the forward line. He's the more natural athletic, the more natural sort of full forward type. Caddy's the athletic type, and May is that sort of big marking, or potentially anyway, big marking sort of brute of a full forward. And I see them as all potentially playing in the senior team next year. Depends on other things. I think that McMahon will probably now be fighting with Tom Edwards for that maybe third tall position. And this all depends what's going on with Peter Wright as well. But I'm sort of looking more long term, given that Peter Wright is now in his late 20s. But I sort of see, McMahon and Tom Edwards as both kind of fighting for that same position now in the team. And I think we might find next year that if we have a reasonably good run with injuries, that one of Tom Edwards and McMahon will be in the senior team and one of them will be in the reserves. I think that's probably how it will look next year with those two players. That's my opinion anyway. So let me know in the comments if you guys agree or disagree. By the way, if you do like this channel, please hit the like and subscribe button. I've hit over 2,000 subscribers, which I'm absolutely stoked about, and I'd like to keep it going. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. The other player who has signed a one-year contract is Jaxon Pryor, which once again, very, very good news for him. And I think this is the correct decision. He was out of contract, and I think his stocks have risen as the season has gone on. He seems to be a favourite of the coach, Brad Scott. He's played every game for the year, and after a slow start to the year, and we have to admit it was a slow start to the year, he did struggle in the first couple of games, made some mistakes and didn't look great, but he really, really ascended, I guess you would say, in his season as the season went on, and he became much more reliable, to the point that we were sort of locking him in every week when we were looking at the team, seeing him as a pretty reliable defender. And I think a 1 year deal is about right. He doesn't, he shouldn't get more than that. He's obviously, not the type of player that you would lock in for longer. And I think that 1 year deal is deserved, though. And the thing that I notice about him, and the thing that I this is more of an unscientific way that I look at defenders, but when I have a player being given a defensive role, I kind of ask myself, did I notice them during the game? And he's the kind of player you don't really notice, and I mean that in a good way. I think with forwards and midfielders, if you don't notice them, it means they're pretty quiet. I think with defenders, if you don't really notice them, especially if they're just doing their job, that kind of means they've just done what they need to do. And I think that's how I would describe Jaxon Pryor in probably the last half of the year anyway. He's just done his job, and he's done it well enough to earn a 1 year contract. And I think the other thing about him is that he can kind of play tall or small. You kind of regard him more as a small, but really he can kind of play both positions or on multiple types of players as well, which makes him a kind of versatile type of defender. So that makes our uncontracted players be whittled down now. We're down to 8. Menzies, Shield and Davey are gone. McMahon and Pryor have been offered 1 year deals. So that's 5 of the 14 players or 5 of the 13 players whose immediate futures, short-term futures now are settled one way or the other. So that leaves, as we have it now, that leaves Hobbs, Laverty, Blackiston, Lual, Smart, Draper, Goldstein and Setterfield. We all think Draper is gone, so you could probably take that out of there. So that leaves, eliminating Draper, that leaves 7. So we're going to still have to get rid of some of those players. I think Blackiston, what all the rumours are saying, is probably going to sign a 1 year deal, which I think would be a goer. Goldstein will be an interesting one because I think what happens with Blackiston might be dependent on what happens with Goldstein and Draper, and all these things are kind of linked. If Draper goes, which appears to be certain, then I think Blackiston almost certainly gets that 1 year deal just because of his, he was recruited as a ruckman. And Goldstein, would he get another deal? I don't think Goldstein should stay for a year. I think just at his age, he does need to go. And if we are one ruck short, I think the best way to deal with that would be to leave a spot open on the list and recruit another ruckman in the pre-season draft, perhaps, or through an avenue like that. Because if Draper goes and Goldstein goes, which I think would be the way to go, we would be left with Nick Bryan, Peter Wright, Lachlan Blackiston, a very raw Vigo Vicentini, and not much else. So the logic might be in that situation, well, why wouldn't you keep Goldstein? But I just think at his age, there's no real future in keeping him at the club. He might stay. Obviously, Brad Scott likes him, and the players that Brad Scott does have an affinity for, he tends to keep. But I would rather free up a spot on the list and take maybe a mature age ruckman or a ruckman in there, the best available ruckman in their early to mid-20s, 22, 23-year-old through other avenues. I just think that would be a better direction for the club to go. But anyway, that's the way it is at the moment. McMahon and Pryor both offered 1 year deals. What do you think of this? Do you think this is the correct move by the club? I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great day. And as always, go Bombers.